Mike Moon, the senator from Southwest Missouri, one of the great orators of the state Senate. Appreciate everybody. Give everybody a chance to get in and get plugged in. Busy week we've had. We brought you Mike Mahoney, the famous Kansas City journalist. We brought you Aaron Baker, extraordinaire of campaigns, and we brought you your colleague, Senator Lincoln Huff, chair of the Appropriations Committee yesterday. Senator Moon, are you in town for pre-filing? Are you in town for a hearing? What are you in town for?
We had a pensions hearing today, and it happened as the day of pre-filing, so I had a few bills to sign, and I got another meeting after I finished with you. So, well, busy day.
Kind of looking forward to session. Last year, it felt to me like you took a different step in your Senate career. Everybody knows you're apt to.
I passed a bill. That's a different step, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But seriously, and not just a bill. You passed probably the most complicated piece of legislation.
No, it's got to have to interrupt you. I just said something that I get on people all the time for saying, I did not pass a bill. I sponsored a bill that was passed. It took 100 individuals, both from both houses or from each house.
But not just a bill. I mean, that thing.
Here's the point I want to make. I didn't do it myself. I didn't pass it. I led the effort, maybe, but it was my bill.
Well, I'll tell the story here that I don't. It was about 2 a.m, and you all were. You might have been standing at ease or something. You were.
Yeah.
Well, maybe people were on the floor. I can't remember. And I was visiting with Senator Esslinger from down my part of the state, our part of the state. And you came in there at 2 a.m. with your chief of staff, and you were working that bill. And it was
in her office. I remember. Yeah.
It wasn't just that wasn't just like a consent bill. Right. Or just some piece of changing state code. I mean, that was a bill about transgender students, about health care, whatever you call it. I mean, it was probably the most complex bill.
Right.
Your approach looked different. It looked like you went about that a little differently. Am I right, or am I just off?
Well, Scott, it probably was different in the fact that I had not had a bill to date that had gotten as far as it got. Mm-hmm. And we had some last minute things that came up. I had to get support from all those who were concerned about it. And you just happened to be in the room with one of the senators that I spoke to that night. So,
well, it looked to me like you were going to a lot of senators and working through, making sure. To me, it was like you were making sure they were okay with it, which to me, Senator, everybody knows you can kill a bill with the best of them. Uh-huh. If you want to sing a piece of legislation, you've got a gun and you can travel.
Yeah.
It looked like you had to make some compromises to actually make that happen. And people trusted you if you were okay with whatever direction the bill went. I'm not an expert on all this stuff. It felt to me like you had the credibility that if you said, okay, this will be all right, everybody else would go along with it.
There was at least one significant change that I really didn't want to put in, but we did. There were 2 really big changes. One was a grandfather clause. I'd like to talk about that in a minute too, but the most significant was a sunset clause, which really I didn't really care for, but I was told, if you're going to get this thing done, we got to go there. And it at least allowed us 4 years to get the bill passed and to have things put into place, see what it's going to look like. And it's been done. And even with the sunset, the bill is preventing abuse of children. So I'm particularly pleased with that.
To me, I understand the concern about that, but in reality, this is I didn't know there was this kind of stuff going on. Maybe it went on a long time, but it's relatively new to me.
Yeah.
Therefore, probably going to be a lot learned about it.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the sunset seemed, I bet you 4 years from now, nobody in your Senate district is going to be for cutting off of children's sexual organs.
Right.
But you're going to know a lot more about it. You'll be able to approach it in a way that is going to be unique. I've noticed this about that issue. If someone comes up with the idea, it's so funny to me, gender affirming care.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you call it something else, you're against it. It's so interesting to me how the language can be used. I mean, gender affirming care, if you say that to me, I'm kind of like, well, that's kind of neat. All right, that's interesting. But that's, you can almost tell how you feel about the issue from how you call it.
We have been really reluctant, at least in the Republican Party, to be proactive in grabbing hold of the language and using it for our benefit. We have allowed the opposition to actually co-op language, change the meanings of words, and they use it against us, and they're very effective at it. So we've got to get better about how we use our messaging.
Oh, you want some popcorn? This from Tulsa's
That looks
down here
awfully good.
downtown Jeff City.
I'm chewing gum, so
Oh,
I'm not going to
gotcha.
mix it with my gum.
And I got my Casey got me this neat Christmas mug. We've been putting hot chocolate in.
Bottoms up. That's good.
If you're around tomorrow or tonight, about 5 o'clock or so, Living Windows here in Jeff City. It's one of the nicest. The whole community comes out.
Mm-hmm.
You will see. Actually, Millie is going to wear the Foodie pajamas from A Christmas Story. Gussie is going to be Ralphie with the Red Rider and the glasses. Yep, he's got his glasses with the whole.
That's
good. We'll be out. I'm going to be the dad that's treated about the Bumpus his dog. So come on down. When you come out, it is Jeff City is a wonderful place, a wonderful host of the state capitol. And it's things like this downtown, the 4th of July, stuff like this. It just make it such a terrific community to be in.
Yeah, that's neat.
And so come on, if you're downtown Jeff City, come down Living Windows, come by the office. We have a leg lamp already lit up in the window that's for Geely, as you know, if you've seen the movie. It's going to be a good time. Let's keep talking here. There's an interesting thing that comes to me. I hear a lot of politicians talk about values, Christianity, how and I'm not one to judge anybody's religion, but you are a person who you walk that walk, and I think it gives you some legitimacy to talk about it. I've wanted to ask you this for a long time.
Okay.
Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Now, my hillbilly Southern Missouri horse sense says he might not share the same fervor of his Christianity than you do, or my mama, or many other people I've seen. Always John Lamping. You were in the House, he was in the Senate. He John can be a little judgmental sometimes, but I'll tell you, John Lamping went home alone every night. I mean, he to me kind of earned some of that, the right to do some of that because he was because he lived it, and I think his colleagues respected that too. Trump is an interesting character. I think if you just took his results from his presidency and took his name off it and compared it to the 10 presidents before, what an amazing success.
Yeah,
but he was a jerk.
Yeah, I think you made a good point. I think we could all, whether what side you're on, we had what appeared to be a thriving economy.
World was at peace.
Yeah, our enemies, was it Washington who said best way to protect yourself is to have a powerful military. We did at that time.
Walk softly, carry a big stick.
You can argue that point today whether we're respected or not. And I'd say we're probably not as respected as we were under President Trump.
I think a lot of the folks in Trump complained, but you know what? Putin didn't cross that river into the Donbass.
Exactly right.
You know what? The Gazan, whatever you want, Hamas terrorists, they didn't go cut little babies' heads off when Trump was there.
Yeah.
The Saudis kept that oil price pretty low. Yep. Now, maybe it's because he was such a jerk. Maybe it's better to be feared than respected. I don't know. But I sure like when I fill my truck up paying $1.68 than $4.
Yeah, that's right. And so I think if you were to, like Justice is Blind, don't say who did it, just put the numbers out there. Most people with common sense would say, yeah, that's a good economy. We're in good shape. His thumbs got him in trouble.
As a religious person,
and
how do you sit down and say, okay, I don't know if there'll be a primary. I couldn't even pay attention to how they do that. I remember it was so funny to me. All the people in 2016 that were for Cruz hated Trump, thought he was worse than the world. We're kissing his hind end. 60 days later, if you get to pick, how would you say a person who likes Trump's rhetoric, likes his results, but maybe questions how dedicated he is to Christian values, how would you counsel them on how to approach that decision?
Well, I may be taking this down a different avenue than what you're really wanting me to take, but one of the things if I had an opportunity to talk to President Trump, I would just point blank ask him, because the scripture says that you'll know them by their fruits. And I'd say, here's what I'm looking at. Tell me your story, and have him tell me how he came to a personal knowledge and faith of Jesus Christ. Because without Jesus and accepting his shed blood and his redemption, the scripture says that God says, I'll never know you. And so first we have to get that squared away. If he's not a true follower of Christ, then of course his fruits aren't going to be showing what I think a believer in Christ ought to be. And that's the crux of it. So if
a lot of the same things as when Clinton was president. Clinton had a pretty successful presidency. I would say probably the most successful one, from Clinton to Trump, if you were just taking that resume,
Mm-hmm.
ranking them, or saying, okay, who did a great job? What how do you rate a presidency?
Right.
If you just look at the numbers, I would say Clinton was pretty good. And I don't think Clinton would be real high on that list either, though. I don't know that his there was some pretty good fruit to pick in the 90s. There's some pretty good fruit to pick under Trump. I'm not sure, that always adds up that way,
If you're
right?
talking about morals.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Okay, and I'm going back to Clinton. Well,
Yeah.
Yeah. Had to do with the Oval Office, and you know what I'm going with that.
He used to hold the place down when he left. Yeah.
But in any case, I would appreciate having a conversation with Donald Trump. I don't know that, I'm just a peon in his eyes, so I don't know if he'd talk to me. But I think the crux of it is, what is your faith? And your faith is going to result in your actions of doing things that are really Christ-like. And I don't say that there's any proof of that necessarily. And that's unfortunate. So don't know if that's the answer you're looking for, but that's the answer I got.
Will you vote for Donald Trump? He's nominee.
If he's a nominee, I probably would. And primarily not because of his morals necessarily,
Sure.
but because of when he ran, I thought, man, what a breath of fresh air. Didn't know him really, except from the Apprentice show, but he made promises, and doggone it, he didn't try to keep them. And the Republicans were the one who fought against him on many, if not all, those things.
Well,
So yeah,
Dick Gephardt. Everybody wants to dog Trump. Dick Gephardt wanted to do tariffs his whole career. Dreamed of them. Union guys have dreamed of tariffs.
Right.
Because he did them. They probably turned their nose up and had some problem. You just got, sometimes I'm not, you're either for something or you ain't for something, right?
Yeah, right.
Let's talk about an issue that is kind of, I think everybody's on board now. What year did you get elected?
2020.
But to the House.
A special election in 2013. So I was seated April 22nd of 2013.
So you got to be there when Mizzou was just, no one be caught dead. Let's bring Truman in this conversation. Truman, when the senator got elected to the House, no one wanted to be anywhere near you. No offense, buddy, but it was bad times.
He's looking pretty good, actually.
He's looking good now. You got it together now. That place, during those protests and stuff, nobody wanted anything to do with that.
I remember.
They would put Post-it notes over their little Mizzou shirts. Nobody would give them grief. They hired Troy. And look, I tell you, I don't know how you run a college.
Hey, you know what? Since you covered up that sign, I forgot to say something. He agrees with us.
Doug, Flat Doug.
Everything.
It's amazing. Every point the senator's made so far, Flat Doug is totally on board with. If you have to zoom in on your phone, you'll be able to see Doug. Even it's plastered on his mouth now. I 100% agree. This is true bipartisanship.
Exactly. Yeah.
Except it's really just him agreeing with you, so I'm not sure. But that is bipartisan. Congratulations, Doug. Way to go.
He'll have his chance.
He said he 100% agrees again. So Moon comes in. I don't care what you look at. Sports are always a great metric, but the campus.
M-O-O-N?
It's M-U-N, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm just because don't want the listeners to get confused. It's Mike Moon and Moon Choi. We call him Moon.
They ain't can.
Yeah, right.
They ain't can.
But I'll take him.
It'd be the worst thing in the world when you have two Southern Missouri fellas trying to dissect a Korean pronunciation of a name. That's probably not the best recipe for success. He comes in, and it's just a fact. I don't even think anybody would argue with it. The place was just literally on fire. This is the best I've ever seen it in my professional lifetime.
You're talking about a burning fire. It was going to
dumpster
burn up.
Yeah, right. Literally, I think they were probably 6 months away from just starting to move programs to Springfield, because you had Cliff, who's universally respected in a part of the state where you kind of keep in handling some of the crazy stuff.
Cliff Smart, you mean?
Yeah,
right.
I tell you, he comes in, and now you got probably the best situation. Mizzou. Do you ever remember Mizzou being as respected and popular as it is right now? I don't.
I can't say that I do.
Well, here's an interesting thing. A little research was brought to me that Moon's salary. It's a great salary. Trust me. I'd split it with you and do it, and be happy that I did. But the fact it's a big job. You look at his salary, it's $760,000. I'm looking at Texas Tech, smaller school, not as well respected, not a whole campus, $1 million. A&M, $900,000. Texas, $950,000. South Carolina, much smaller. Penn State, $950,000. Penn State, good Lord, they've had their share of problems.
Right.
North Texas, whatever even that is, $1.3 million. Nebraska, they got kicked out of the AAU. The AAU is a collection of all the top research schools. That the guy that's running Nebraska into the ground makes 943.
Mm-hmm.
You go to the Houston University, 1.1. Illinois, 861. Not nearly as successful. Arkansas, a little different. Colorado, Kansas, the Kansas guy that just has one campus, almost $1 million. Kentucky, $1 million. You know, part of the success of Mizzou has been running like a business, actually being responsive to parents and legislators that appropriate money. Do you start to worry they're going to let their best asset go if they don't pay?
I recall as you were talking, the first time I met Dr. Moon Choi, it was down at the Southwest Research Center in Mount Vernon. And I didn't know what to expect. I hadn't really heard much about him before, but one of the kindest, gentlest individuals I think I've ever met. And he's winsome. And so you talked about business. Now, of course, this is a different type of business, but he's been successful in changing the hearts and minds of people to gain students and to continue their success as an educational institution. And so when you talked about business people, I was thinking about, the grocery stores and big industries and manufacturers, and what do they do with their successful CEOs?
They keep them.
And they reward them to keep them. Now, honestly, I don't know if Dr. Choi is actually looking to say, look what I've done, now I need more money, but he should be rewarded. And
I don't think he's that type of guy.
No,
but I'm going to tell you right now, if I was interviewing the senator from Illinois and looking at this list, I'd be like, why in the world are you making this? And why don't we go get that guy?
Yeah.
If I was at a different school, I was at Iowa or something,
right?
I think I'd be saying, remember that Mizzou, how they're having a heck of a year. If I was Nebraska, just got kicked out of the AU in a much weaker conference in football, doing terribly, I'd be like, hey, you're making what? Maybe we should call Columbia and see if that open wants to come up here. And Moon is from Illinois. I just think if you're running it like a business, I think the curators it's time for them to have a discussion about. When I look at this list, I'm like, I think we want to keep our guy, and I don't think he'd be the type that would actively try to back him into a corner. But I tell you, it's probably just good business sense to get out in front on locking him down. And if you're him, you're willing to let that contract run and negotiate, right? I mean, you've got the track record to show.
Yeah, and I think it's obvious he's demonstrated the ability to bring all those necessary parts back together. So it's a functioning, something to be proud of in Missouri. So,
I mean, you and I aren't necessarily the folks that are going to be saying positive stuff about Mizzou unless they earn it.
All right.
I mean, I'm just going to walk around and look at reasons to talk about an academic institution in high regard. But I think they do. Let's talk about your race. The district's been changed.
Yeah.
Where is the district now?
Well, currently still in Lawrence, where I reside, and we have Berry, McDonald, which were parts of the district before. They removed Stone and Taney and replaced it with Christian. And Christian County is probably going to be the population center that I'm going to have to win to retain my seat. I've been working a lot down there, meeting elected
You reckon that
officials.
district was drawn for a reason?
Oh, yeah.
I saw that map come out.
Yeah. Honestly, I'll say when they took out Stone and Taney, there was some disappointment because I had a stronghold down there. Well, I shouldn't say stronghold.
You had some folks in Branson that were your folks.
I had a strong support base down there.
Yeah.
Stronghold, maybe not, but I really enjoyed the people down there.
I think the Branson folks were on your side.
I think so. And now, though, with Christian County, there were folks that I knew well before I became a senator. And so I have a good relationship with a lot of them. And hopefully I can maintain those relationships and build new coalitions with folks before the election comes.
What all you do when you're not been serving the public?
You mean during the interim?
Yeah.
Okay.
On a regular day. If you weren't up here today, what would you be doing back home?
Well, let me say, first of all, this year was really a strange one. The second to last week, I was physically in session, but I wasn't there. And I told my staff, my dad was dying, and I didn't know how long he was going to last. So I took off, went home, spent the week before the last session with him, then came back, spent the last session there, and then he died the week after session ended. So I went back and spent 3 solid months with Mom. They had been married nearly 70 years. And so I was helping her adjust a single life, and she's doing really well. So that took up a lot of my summer.
You gonna get her to move to Missouri?
Oh, for goodness, no. She's a Virginia's for Lovers girl. She's pretty well rooted there, and I don't blame her. And she's doing well. 87 years old, still mows grass, cleans houses for people. manages rentals. And anyway, she's healthy, and I'm real proud of her, and for her allowing me to stay there. So outside that, I've got a farm to run. I've got my wife Denise is
What do you raise on the farm?
Cattle primarily. I learned long ago that I'm a grass grower, because the better grass you have, the more healthy your animals are going to be. And so I've been fortunate to live in a place that has good grass, and animals seem to be healthy. And we also process chickens every now and then, and grow a few vegetables for our own use. Then we have some properties that we manage as well. But there's a lot to do. And in between all those things, I've got meetings to talk to constituents. We've been having some issues down in the Southwest area with the application of animal waste, and it's raised the hair on the back of people's necks, and DNR is involved. And fortunately, they're taking some action that hopefully will satisfy all the parties concerned too. But there's lots of stuff to do, and so busy time.
So your campaign, I guess it probably not totally into gear yet, but you got to be thinking about it, because you got 5 months of being up here.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of have your plans starting to lay out.
I've really been in campaign mode anyway. It's not, full-fledged everything, but
What do you think about you?
Meeting with people.
I got my you made my tip sheet look good when you was running your last.
How's that?
Well, I always said you was going to win, and the reason I said that is, some people might key on the chicken video, or they might see you on the floor sparking with somebody, but back home on the doorstep, you're going to be very hard to demonize.
Yeah.
It's going to be very hard to convince folks you're too bad a guy. You come up, the mustache, obviously, everybody likes. And I just always thought, and you'll actually do the doors. That's the thing. A lot of people talk about doing doors.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, like Andrew Koenig does a lot of doors, but also his doors are about 60 feet from each other. Where your doors, you got to get in the truck and drive down the next road. And, it's
sometimes
a little bit of Christian County now. You got some cul-de-sacs, but for the most part,
right.
I mean, if you're going to do Lawrence County, the northern part of Lawrence County, there ain't no walking in between doors. You got to get in the truck and drive around.
Yeah.
And I assume that's what you do again. Let's talk though about this coming up session.
Okay.
So I felt like Cindy O'Loughlin did a good job of calming the waters.
Mm-hmm.
Am I wrong? Was that your take?
Well, we had some times together.
But that's what it's supposed to be.
And I like Cindy. I think she's reasonable. I'm hoping that we get along well enough that we can work together through our differences. And, like you said, we're all human. I had a pastor one time years ago say, life is easy until you add people. And that's exactly right, because we get along famously, many of us do. And then you add one little wrinkle in there, and then it kind of changes the whole dynamics. But, Cindy's in a leadership position. She has to please 32 other people besides herself, 33 other people. And
I thought you meant besides you.
Yeah. And, I don't.
So tell me this.
Let me say this. I don't try to be obstinate on purpose. It just
you can be a little ornery sometimes, though, right?
Yeah, sure. But when there's something that I truly believe in, and there's no rhyme or reason to do differently, it's like, why? And that's where I'm going to say, okay, I'm drawing the line here. I'm digging my heels in, and
what did she do? What did Caleb and Cindy do differently than David and Caleb? Or was it just that you needed to change some players?
There's more listening, I think.
Okay.
I've had more, I think, meaningful meetings and conversations with Cindy than any of the other leaders in the past, and I think that's good. And I don't expect her to bend to my every whim. That's not what she should do. But at the same time, I shouldn't have to bend to every one of her whims either. Okay. So, it's
funny. I've seen people run for Senate leadership thinking, this is my chance. We're going to do all my stuff. And you get to Senate leadership, you do everyone else's stuff. You don't really get to do any of your stuff very much.
Yeah, that could be unfortunate too.
Well, I mean, but hey, it's to whom much is given, much is required. Right?
Right.
I mean, that's, so this coming session, it felt like that Cindy, especially after 4 years of Dave and Caleb and Cindy's team had a little more credibility with some members to say, I'll get to your stuff. But some stuff there wasn't 18 votes for.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it's very hard to kill bills and pass bills.
Mm-hmm.
I look at the landfill bill.
Mm-hmm. That's coming back, probably.
I would assume so.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's an honest thing Senator Bratton's into.
Sure.
But, I mean, you saw this. If you're going to get up and kill people's legislation, well, legislation. No one in the state may care about it, but that senator cares that you killed their thing that nobody else cared about but them.
Mm-hmm.
And that bill comes due. Do you see a climate that can cool, that can allow either one, some Senator Bratton to be reserved on some other people's stuff and pass his stuff, or just it doesn't happen, or steamroll it, or what happens with that landfill? It's an interesting thing to me.
There is a scenario that running through my mind, and I cannot and I will not. I could, but I will not give all the details. I'll just suffice it to say that there was a bill that I carried for a few years, was not allowed to stay in my grips, and I intended to be spiteful because it was taken from me. And I did make one comment. I did make one comment on the floor, and my intent was to, well, just kill just about everything I could coming out of a particular Senate district. And I didn't do it. Now, should I be commended for not doing that? I don't know. But it wouldn't have been fruitful. It would have been helpful or beneficial to anybody. It would have been taking my hurts, feelings, and just hanging them out to dry for everybody to see. And I'm hopeful that we all can, as senators, even when we have our feelings hurt, which I guess I'll admit I have my feelings hurt, to say, you know what, there's things that are bigger than that. And if we're really going to serve our state well, we're going to have to put our petty things aside. And that's hard for me to do. It was hard for me to do last year. I think I was able to do it successfully. And some things were passed, good things. There were a lot of bad things that were passed too. And so I guess one thing that I would appeal to all the Senate and the House members to do is to focus in on what's important.
You know what always makes me think is,
and leave our own selfish desires aside.
If you get up on the floor and read a book,
mm-hmm.
Is it really nobody even remembers by 4th of July what that bill even was.
Right.
I've very seldom seen a piece of public policy that the Missouri people really wanted, like Medicaid expansion.
Yeah.
There's a group of people that wanted that.
Yeah.
And it turns out there's a majority of this state wanted that.
Right.
I've never seen a majority want something very long they didn't get. We live in the moment. We want to see this on Twitter today and Facebook, and we want to see now.
Right.
And we get our prime packages. You can see my table's full of Christmas gifts. We want that shipped in 2 days, or we're put out. And
right.
I bought a shirt and it didn't come in for 4 days, and you'd have just thought I'd lost my ice cream cone. I mean, I was just livid. And I was thinking, you know how silly that is. In my lifetime, getting a shirt in 2 weeks would have been quite an accomplishment. Mm-hmm. But I think that is true. But I think people forget, one, that you are human. And two, while it's a very serious thing you do, most of that legislation that dies, the world doesn't come to an end.
You're absolutely correct.
It just yeah. What really happens is the lobbyist that's pushing that gets paid another year to push it. That's really the end result is usually just pretty much something like that.
That's a great point. Yeah, oftentimes when we're not doing anything, the people are more protected. You've heard the term, when this legislature's out of session, your liberties are protected. There is a lot of truth to that. If you look at some of the things we passed last year, like, dang, what are we doing? And so we should be more careful.
About sports betting.
Mm-hmm.
My assumption is you're not going to race out to the top of the hill to get your phone to good service to bet money on sports.
No, that's right.
But tell me this: it's almost like the dichotomy with Trump. To me, if you talk about liberty and freedom, I'm not a gambler. Of all the litany of vices I have, gambling just isn't one of them. Mm-hmm. But I also don't know why you shouldn't be able to gamble if you want to. Yeah. You talk about liberty and freedom. Is it just?
That's a libertarian view.
I love giving grief to Sophie because Sophie, your old campaign manager, Sophie Shore. Sophie talks about liberty and freedom, but I'm gonna say, well, unless you don't want them to do it, then you're tyrannical. Mm-hmm. At some point, it's an interesting mix of factors that goes into a decision on voting on something, to where you're going to allow people or not allow people to do something with their own money. I mean, the little bit of money the government doesn't take in taxes. Mm-hmm. It to me, on one level, it's like, well, gambling might be wrong. Mm-hmm. But also, if you believe in freedom, well, You have the freedom to do what you want with your money.
Yeah.
How do you come to decisions like that? What are the factors that goes through your mind when you're deciding how you're going to come down on it?
Yeah, I wish the state didn't have to be in that decision at all, because you're right. People should be able to do with whatever they've earned, whatever they want to do without governmental oversight. And the one thing that kind of drives that decision is something I learned from Dr. James Dobson years ago with Focus on the Family. He was appointed, I think it was by Reagan, to a task force that was studying gambling and things of that sort. And he made a statement after all the research that was done on it, that folks who gamble within a certain amount of time tend to be more in debt than when they won their winnings.
Casinos aren't built on people losing or taking money out of them.
Yeah.
They're put on people leaving money in them.
And of course, some of that's bad decisions. And there are people who probably can't afford, who've got disposable income and can throw it away.
Yeah.
But for those who are out on the streets and thinking, man, if I'll just buy that one scratcher's card and win it, I've thought that before.
But Senator, I'll say
it just doesn't happen that way.
I see those gas station slot machine things, right?
Yeah.
Now, I think it looks a little tacky. I'll be honest with you. There's a place I like. There's a place in Jonesburg on 70 that I like to get chicken strips at.
Yeah.
I got some this week. Boy, if you time that just right when them things are fresh, I am a gas station restaurant connoisseur. The Champ's Chicken at the Fast Lane in Jonesburg, right off 70, the old white car wash is out of business. Right behind there, great gas station. You walk in there, it's pretty much a casino / chicken strip service / gas station. It looks tacky to me.
Yeah.
But again, who am I to tell that guy how to make a living?
Yeah.
Who am I to tell that? And those folks put that money in there. I'm just going to say, I was in there, gosh, what was it? I was in there Wednesday morning, and I hit it just about 7:30. I hit it just when they came out of the fryer. I was looking forward to this the whole time. Casey rolls her eyes every time I eat at a gas station. She's too classy for such endeavors. Although she was classy enough to get me this bottoms up Christmas mug, which I'm enjoying right now. But I looked at them folks and I'm thinking, and those folks lined up. Now this is 7:30 in the morning.
Uh-huh.
They were going to work. It looked like
for the chicken.
They come in for the chicken. They're gambling.
Okay, gotcha.
I just think, and them folks ain't putting that money in Roth 401ks or IRAs, right? Them folks ain't out buying Microsoft stock.
That's a much safer bet, by the way.
I would say that's true. But I bet you they wouldn't. It wasn't like they took their money out of their Microsoft stock to put in that gas station slot machine. Yeah. So, it's not as though I tend to doubt that the good decisions that a person might soberly look back and say, well, you ought to do this with your money. Yeah. I don't think they were choosing between a really good decision and that. It was probably that and something else that might not be a real good choice either.
Sure. Yeah, and I understand people do it for fun, and they likely have the disposable income, and it wouldn't be an issue that I would filibuster. I'd probably vote against it because I just don't think it's, socially, morally.
How do you mix your own moral beliefs with your beliefs about liberty and freedom? Because sometimes those are in conflict.
Yeah. Honestly, I do make it a matter of prayer, and if I don't get a clear direction from the scripture or from conversations that I'm having with others, then it just comes down partly to what do the people in my district believe, and if it's not a principle that I just can't go with, and something that violates either the Constitution or my personal morals, then I can vote for it.
Give me a prediction.
Okay.
This is Senator Hoskins last year. He's been a proponent of letting people spend their money how they want, even if it clogs up the line at the good chicken strip place in Jonesburg at 7:30 in the morning, and they want to gamble, and it's in the way of me getting my chicken strips quicker. Yeah. Do you think this is in his last session? Is this the year something on that passes?
I think so.
Really?
Yeah.
It's going to take some compromise, right?
Yeah, I think there's some things in the works that may sway a lot of folks.
I'd almost like to see it just for Denny. Like, I'm not probably going to be a consumer of gas station casinos, but almost for Denny, who's worked on it, you almost kind of want to see a good guy have a good day. Yeah. Right. What about the landfill? What will happen with that? And let me ask you this. Let me just put you on the spot with one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Everybody talked about with this clean line thing. It's your land. Do what you want with it.
Mm-hmm.
I ain't going to tell you how to do it. I didn't buy that land. You bought that land.
Yeah.
If you want to sell it to a landfill, and there's already a half-mile thing, and it fit all the laws. Mm-hmm. There's a little bit, to me, a middle matter of fairness on the landfill, or bought that land at a price or whatever, under the existing law. Now you want to change the law on them. Mm-hmm. That seems, I understand if I own that property, I feel like they do. But I also think if I was explaining this about a problem in Utah, you'd be like, well, that's a little unsettling.
Yeah.
And then if it's your property to do what you want with, why can't you sell it to landfill or to China or to whoever?
Well, you're talking about language there where a person should have the freedom and liberty to take what they earn, what they purchase, their property, and do whatever within the legal realm they can. The way I understand this landfill situation was take out all the proximity arguments. It was presented to me that all the property was owned, and
at least option
the
maybe,
testing. Right? Well, I don't even think we got that far on some of it, and I could be corrected on some of that. But
yeah, I don't know the details either. I don't act like I do.
But the way I understood it and was presented to me was not the same as when everything was being fleshed out from the locals, from some of the other locals, because the principal owners were.
My heart goes out to folks that are organized, because those folks mean well. I understand it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it is a little challenging to say, well, clean line, we're up for property rights.
Mm-hmm.
And now this isn't eminent domain. This is just you just want to sell your land. Mm-hmm. To me, there was somebody that came up with the idea of paying the landfill company what they have in the project. Mm-hmm. That to me, I was like, well, at least that makes a little bit of difference. And look, Senator Searpoy, Senator Bratton, you want to see them succeed at what they're doing. It's not like they're going to put a golf course in there. They're doing it because of these local folks want this, and your heart goes out to them. It's just interesting how when you're running, you're like, well, I'm gonna be for freedom and liberty and da 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 da. But when you get up there, all of a sudden, those two things kind of
hit on, yeah. And sometimes it is blurred a little bit. In this case, you have to take the information and then digest it and say, okay, what is really the truth? And the way I see it today, what was presented as truth from the landfill owners and operators was not the total story.
When you're in and I know you've got other meetings, I don't want to keep you, but when you're in your office and you hear from the landfill, obviously an interested party, right? They're going to give you, they're going to polish it up the best they can. And when you hear from the locals who don't want a landfill coming into their house, they're going to polish their argument up. Yeah. How do you take those two things? Some of the facts they present are going to be in conflict. How do you go? Do you just have your staff have to dig in and find out where the rubber meets the road on their pitches?
In some cases, yes. In this particular case, it was just going to DNR records and determine what had been done, and it hadn't been completed to the degree that it was stated to be, and the ownership records weren't there. And so I think a lot of this argument was premature. It would have been
or maybe it's a good time to have the argument before they get all that done.
Well,
that way you're not kind of going back door on it.
That's a good segue into what I think should have happened, and maybe some of it did, but all the people who were in the surrounding areas and had really a desire for it either to come in or not, I don't think they were all met with the same degree of information and everything being transparent. Say, look, here's where we are. Would you allow this? Would you not? I think if the owners of the property had looked at that and said, hey, is this even going to be reasonable? Or are we going to have to go to the legislature and have them ram it down their throat? That's something totally different.
Well, tell me this. Give me a prediction. You sat in that chamber. You got a good reason. Anybody. Does this pass? Does a bill blocking the landfill pass? Because if you don't pass anything, they can just keep moving forward, right?
That goes back to personalities and
I'll put you on the spot.
Some tensions that were raised.
Do you think maybe if your only concern was blocking that landfill, maybe Senator Bratton should have a conversation with Senator Coleman?
Yeah, that obviously needs to happen.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
He might have got a little worked up, maybe.
Yeah.
And people say that like, oh, you should act big. They're human beings.
Sure.
On the Senate floor, it's tough. You've done it long enough now, but can you remember the first time you're on the Senate floor, you got inquired of? It is if it doesn't take you aback a little bit, you're doing it wrong. It should be a little bit, imposing to represent the over 100,000 people that elected you.
A couple hundred now.
I mean, that's if that doesn't make you have to take it swallow, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
But they like I said, they're human beings, but it feels like to me, it might not be as a property rights issue as much as it is. Maybe Senator Bratton got a little bit overly aggressive.
Honestly, I was not in the chamber when that happened. I think that was the week of Virginia.
Yep.
And so I didn't see or hear it. and maybe I need to go back and look at it too and listen to it. But we all get offended. I do. I offend people. I've done it before. I know, and I'm going to tell you on that particular bill, from what I understand today, if it's presented the way that it was as far as the language last year, I'll vote for it.
Yeah. And now, I'll ask you, is that got something to do with your relationship with Senator Bratton? Does that help the cause there?
Well, certainly it helps because I like Rick. We're friends, but at the same time, it's what the landfill owners presented, and I'll tell you what, they won me over. Because after they presented, I thought, man, what in the world?
It is one of the best grassroots things I've ever seen in my life.
But then I went to the other information. It's like, okay, it's like Proverbs says something like similar to the first person to present their case is right. And then you hear the other side. It's like, oh, okay, now we got a problem. And so then I started looking at other issues, and we're going back to DNR. They hadn't even done the testing that was required. So it's like,
it does take a while to build land.
More information,
and it probably are too.
Yeah.
Sure. I'll ask you the last question.
Okay.
Governor's race coming up.
Mm-hmm.
You got a friend running, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Have you made an endorsement? Are you going to endorse? Are you going to help put up signs for somebody? What are you going to do?
I have made no endorsements. I still have conversations to have with all the candidates, and so, but goodness, they're making lots of waves out there.
I'll tell you, it's so interesting to me. I've said this before. I think Senator Eichel, it's almost like business, right? You had to learn how to grow better grass so you could have better cows, so you can make money, right?
Right.
When your kids start getting older or whatever, and they cost more, well, you better figure out how to get a little more out of that grass so you got to buy that hay to cut your costs down. Bill Eichel had to run the best campaign.
Yeah.
Or he had no chance.
Yeah.
I think he's running the best campaign.
He's running hard.
And I think he gives the best speech in the party. It's so interesting. On the Senate floor, if you just heard Bill on the Senate floor, you'd be like, well, that guy's a little mean, But you hear him at Lincoln Day, you're like, well, all right, let's go. This guy's got it together.
Right. Yeah.
It is an interesting dynamic there. And Bill knows how to get under your skin. And I think he's found the way to get under the skin of the Secretary of State. I think Governor Kehoe, it's just they're not fishing the same ponds that much, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I also Mike Kehoe just doesn't put much stock into it. But I do think Bill's found a way to get under Secretary Ashcroft's skin.
I'm sure you're right.
And I wouldn't want Bill Eichel attacking me. He would get under my skin pretty quick too. I don't say that condescendingly, but I think I'll ask you this: can Bill Eichel win that race?
If the election were today,
well, not today.
Got a great shot.
See, I think the election were today, we could almost name half the people voting for him.
He's still got a great shot either way.
But I think if you extrapolate his campaign out, the guy could win.
If he's still running hard, continues to raise money like he's been raising, gets his message out like he's doing, and that really
could it get harder?
Scales up. Yes.
I think raising money will be interesting because obviously a lot of the folks he's known for 7 years, a lot of them don't give during session, right? But I think he's reached a part of the campaign where a lot of folks thought he would run and bail out of the race for lieutenant governor, and I think now he made my tip sheet look good. I've always said I think he's running for governor because of what he told me, and him and Jim never told me something that wasn't what was up.
Yeah, so I think he's good.
And he's in it, and he's running a hell of a race. I think now it comes down. You start to get into some of those bigger donors. They want to see you can win.
Mm-hmm.
They want to see a path that they don't want to back the person. They want to know the governor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's it's their money, right? To give out for whatever reason they want to give it out for.
Right.
I think he's reached a point of the race where he's credible, a credible candidate. But now that next step is okay. Now that you're credible, you're running. We believe you. We want to see how you actually win. And obviously, Jay Ashcroft. I mean, you're from Southwest Missouri. That name is going to do there's a floor of voters that are going to vote for him. Doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Bill's done a good job picking off folks that are maybe younger. In a Republican primary, 40 is pretty young. I mean, 40 is very young, actually. It's funny for me. They'll talk about, well, this young person, though. I'm like, you've never worked a polling place in August for a Republican primary in rural Missouri. There is no one under 40.
Right.
There's very few under 50. Most of them are 65 and over.
Right.
That get out of the car that hot August day.
Mm-hmm.
But he can win. You think he can win?
Yeah. Well, I think you've made some great points about all the candidates. Jay Ashcroft has good name recognition.
Yeah.
In Southwest Missouri, he's polling very well, and
is going to. And I don't think you're going to. Whatever very well is, he's going to poll well down there.
Yeah.
If you run a great campaign, it's just going to be pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
very well is probably just what he wakes up with.
Yeah, right.
Um,
So I think, yeah, both Jay has a great chance to win. Bill has a chance to win. So,
and Mike Keogh, I know you guys maybe have been on opposite sides of some stuff. Like,
I haven't paid much attention to his race, so I haven't heard.
but I mean, there's no way two
type
A guys like the two of you couldn't agree and disagree on a whole host of
Sure.
things. But I mean, when Mike Keogh walks in a room, okay, that guy's important. I don't know what he does, but that guy's got it together.
Mm-hmm.
He's a leader.
Yeah.
I mean, when Mike, when he walks into a room, he's a leader.
Well, I have to tell you, he has some support down our way too. I have some friends who know him, have a relationship with him, and I think unless things have changed the last time I talked with him, they're in his corner. So, Mike's got some support as well.
But you ran for Congress, right? I mean, to me, you're running for state rep. You can almost know 20% of the people by name that are going to vote for you, right? Run for state senate, a little different.
Mm-hmm.
Dynamics change some. You can't know everybody, but of your base of supporters, you can still have a pretty good idea of kind of where they're from, whatever. You ran for Congress, it's a totally different world.
Yeah.
Like Mike Keogh has he has the most contacts in his phone in the state, but it's a huge state.
And you have to rely on that too, because you have people you've convinced you're the person for that particular job, and you hope they will go out and spread the news. And when
stay pinned, right?
And when you have people working with you and they have good relationships outside your sphere of influence, that speaks volumes. So that could play well in his favor too.
I think that an interesting way, and this is where's that nickel you handed me? This political observation is worth this whole nickel that you found on the floor here. It does feel like Eigel's circle of people he could influence either know Keogh personally and are going to vote for him, or aren't going to consider voting for Keogh.
Mm-hmm.
Ashcroft and Eigel have some overlap.
Yeah.
And if you're Keogh, you got 5 million, which is more than both your opponents combined. You sit back and watch them fight for a while, right? I mean, don't go break it up. Let them, he called you a dirty dog 2 weeks ago, or he hit on your girlfriend. I mean, the further he can stand back right now,
mm-hmm.
and he ain't catching punches, probably the better.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I noticed, Jay probably should raise one. If you're the front runner, and if you don't think Jay Ashcroft's a front runner, you're not. I don't think you have a reason that you don't want to see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You probably should be raising more money though.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't need, if you have an opponent, right? You don't need as much money as your opponent to win. But what do you think you need? Well, in your last race, what did you have? Half the money?
Yeah. We
and won by 20%, right?
Not well.
15. Whatever.
Yeah,
it was a comfortable win.
Yeah.
Jay Ashcroft doesn't need as much money, but he probably needs half, 60% of the money.
Yeah, he needs a whole lot more than I ever had, because he's going statewide, of course. But one thing I think he has in his favor is his dad.
Well, sure.
John Ashcroft, former U.S. Attorney General, and he's out stumping for Jay, and that's.
I hear folks dog him for that and say, "Oh, he's there because his dad." Well, yeah, there's a gal in Arkansas just across the line from you. Her dad was governor. You know what they call her? Governor.
Mm-hmm.
It really don't matter why you have support. I mean, it is ridiculous to pretend like Jay Ashcroft doesn't benefit greatly from his last name, but also who cares?
Yeah,
it is.
I think most fathers and sons, if they have a good relationship, you see that dynamic playing out.
Yeah, and it's very helpful. And there is more to Jay Ashcroft than his last name, but yes, that is a very helpful last name.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've taken more of your time than I asked for. We could sit and chew the fat all day. I want to holler if you're doing rural broadband, you want to see how it's done right. United Fiber up in Savannah, those guys they're doing such a good job. Normally where we're from, the city has a broadband person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the outlying areas, the co-ops and folks have to come together. They've done such a good job doing the outlying areas in Savannah. They're wanting to come into St. Joseph now with rural broadband. It is a terrific story. And if you come to town, say the Courtyard by Marriott, do the right thing. You want to put a good face on it. You want to look slick. You're going to come up and ask his colleague Lincoln Huff for money for your town. Do the Courtyard by Marriott. Put on the right face. Senator, thank you so much for the time. I could sit and visit with you there, but I know you got stuff to do. I've probably already made you late for it.
I'm fine. It'll all work out.
Well, from myself, from Truman, from everybody else, congratulations to Kelton, who is getting married tomorrow, and a guy Brad Green, who's worked for, my God, he worked for Romine, he worked for Dempsey, he worked for Tony Luchtenmeyer more recently, worked for the Senate when Ron Richard was there. Great guy. He's going to work for Senator Schmidt. The federal government's gain is the state government's loss. Couldn't be a better guy than Brad Green. I'm excited for him in the next chapter of his career. Guys, thank you so much, and we will see you Sunday with Senator Lauren Arthur for this week episode of Politics. Now you're gonna see something I've never done here before. I'm actually gonna turn the thing off. This is where we missed Kelton. Thank you all.
I guess I could have clicked.
Oh, yeah.